Fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. Susie Kassem. When remembering the end of the race, Bannister says, doctors and scientists said that breaking the 4-minute mile was impossible, that one would die in the attempt. Thus, when I got up from the track after collapsing at the finish line, I figured I was dead. As is so often the case with world records, once Bannister proved a human could in fact run a mile under 4 minutes, it left the world stunned and helped shatter a collective mental barrier. Australian John Landy bettered the Iffley Road record the following month with a time of 3 minutes 57.9 seconds, while in the 3 years that followed that historic day in Oxford, a further 15 runners would go on to also perform the same feat. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Bill Gates. Self-efficacy is essential for motivation. That term refers to the belief one has in their ability to complete a task. Direct experience and watching someone else perform do best, but arousal and persuasion are also factors. The Big Fish Little Pond effect says that your self-concept will be indirectly based on your surrounding reference group. This, in turn, can impact your motivation. The internal-external model of self-concept suggests we also compare our strengths and weaknesses internally. Thus, your motivation to do one thing might be hindered when you're even better at something else. This is why it's important to challenge our thoughts. In some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. Viktor Frankl. Although we typically interpret stress as a negative thing, it can be good for us. Viewing stress as a helpful part of life rather than as harmful is associated with better health, emotional well-being, and productivity. Even during periods of high stress, viewing stress as harmful leads people to cope in ways that are less helpful, whether it's getting drunk to release stress, procrastinating to avoid stress, or imagining worst-case scenarios. One study found that simply having the goal to avoid stress increased the long-term risk of outcomes like depression, divorce, and getting fired. Viewing stress more positively seems to encourage people to cope in ways that help them thrive, whether it's tackling the source of stress, seeking social support, or finding meaning in it. The most helpful mindset towards stress goes beyond a generally positive attitude towards stress. The 3 most protective beliefs about stress are: 1. To view your body's stress response as helpful, not debilitating. For example, to view stress as energy you can use. 2. To view yourself as able to handle and even learn and grow from the stress in your life. And 3. To view stress as something that everyone deals with and not something that proves how uniquely screwed up you or your life is. Recognizing the upside of stress isn't about denying that it can be harmful, but rather reducing overwhelm and hopelessness. Psychologists have found that the ability to embrace stress requires a high tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. You have to be able to understand that 2 seemingly opposite things can be true at the same time. Ambiguity tolerance is the ability to accept unclear, uncertain, or novel situations and work effectively. It can be developed through journaling, since a space like that allows you to question your mindset for a given situation, question the validity of any long-term plans, and navigate worst-case hypotheticals through scenario planning. It can be true that going through something stressful can make you sick or depressed, and it can also be true that the same stressful experience can ultimately make you stronger, more compassionate, and more resilient over time. Stress is most likely to be harmful when the following conditions are present. It feels against your will, out of your control, and utterly devoid of meaning. If you can change any of these conditions by finding some meaning in it, you can reduce the harmful effects of stress. Surprisingly, every measure of stress that the researchers asked about predicted a greater sense of meaning in life. People who had experienced the highest number of stressful life events in the past were most likely to consider their lives meaningful. People who said they were under a lot of stress right now also rated their lives as more meaningful. Even time spent worrying about the future was associated with meaning. Stress can be seen as an indicator for how engaged you are in your activities and relationships. An important mindset shift is to view stress as an opportunity to learn and grow. For several hours after you have a strong stress response, the brain is rewiring itself to remember and learn from the experience. Stress leaves an imprint on your brain that prepares you to handle similar stress the next time you encounter it. Psychologists call the process of learning and growing from a difficult experience stress inoculation. Self-care, the practice of taking action to improve one's health or well-being, also plays a role in stress management. However, when it comes to your mindset, there's another thing worth considering. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better. A similar yet more heavily studied concept is grit, which is a persistent passion for long-term goals that's linked to success at school and organizations alongside enhanced well-being. Note that anti-fragility improves upon the concept by encouraging reasonable challenges that promote growth. It can be fostered by being tolerant of unexpected things, which means being open-minded and prioritizing action over lots of research. That way, you avoid information overload. You should also take lots of small risks as you strive for self-betterment, but avoid huge bets. Focus more on avoiding things that don't work than trying to find out what does work. One way to do that is to look for habits and rules that have been around for a long time. In short, stop optimizing for today or tomorrow and start playing the long game. That means being less efficient in the short term, but more effective in the long term. You have to be willing to look like an idiot in the short term to look like a genius in the long term. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Viktor Frankl. Defensive pessimism may actually be beneficial in some situations. That term refers to a mindset that focuses on negative results for the sake of mentally preparing oneself for a stressful situation. Studies have often reported better outcomes from optimists versus pessimists. More recent research has also addressed the role of a realistic mindset. Realistically pessimistic versus unrealistically optimistic health expectations was related to both reduced depressive symptoms and risk of death. Similarly, unrealistic optimism versus realistic optimism when health is deteriorating was associated with a 313% higher death rate. Optimism versus pessimism is not black and white. There is room for realism in this equation. Realistic optimism serves a protective function by allowing a person to remain optimistic while accepting the reality of difficult situations. Another unhealthy mindset is learned helplessness. This occurs when an individual continuously faces a negative, uncontrollable situation and stops trying to change their circumstances, even when they have the ability to do so. This occasionally results in failure to launch, a term referring to young adults who are fully dependent on their caregivers. Fortunately, by breaking down goals into bite-sized pieces, one can regain a sense of control. Micro goals, paired with questioning outcomes and negative thoughts, will allow one to develop learned optimism. Journaling prompts make this process easier, especially since journaling can be done virtually. Because learned helplessness can affect any aspect of your life, it's important to develop awareness of how it can manifest. Self-handicapping involves engaging in behaviors that sabotage your chances of success. Why would people do things that might make them more likely to fail? We all want to feel good about ourselves, but researchers have found that we hurt our chances of success to avoid taking responsibility for our failures. After all, we don't like trying our best only to not be successful. However, all self-sabotage does is hinder our growth and our resilience. We have to remember that mistakes make lessons more memorable, and that our value shouldn't be determined by unrealistic perfectionism. On the flip side, the fear of success may also contribute to self-handicapping. This can be caused by feeling like a fraud, known as imposter syndrome, social anxiety, or worries about potential backlash. Regardless of the cause, self-handicapping may look like procrastination, drug use, taking too much responsibility, self-sabotaging relationships, unhopeful predictions, and making excuses.
For many people, these behaviors are almost automatic.
Researchers have suggested that self-handicapping can be linked to what is known as the self-serving bias, in which people claim personal credit for success but blame outside forces for their failures. Fortunately, we can improve by being open-minded to learning, using frameworks for brainstorming or anything else we might need, challenging negative thoughts, and appreciating our positive qualities. Another way to be more realistic is to be aware of the cognitive biases that affect our worldview and reframe situations accordingly. The peak-end rule makes it so that we remember a memory or judge an experience based on how we felt at its peak moments, as well as how we felt at the end. Take advantage of the fact that positive or negative endings are especially memorable. A similar phenomenon is the serial position effect, a combination of the primacy effect and the recency effect. Because we best remember the first and last items in a series, the serial position effect proposes that we find it hard to remember the middle. Naive realism is the tendency to believe our perception of the world reflects it exactly as it is, unbiased and unfiltered. We don't think our emotions, past experiences, or cultural identity affect the way we perceive the world. The illusion of control, also known as illusory control, describes how we believe we have greater control over events than we actually do. Even when something is a matter of random chance, we often feel like we're able to influence it in some way. Successful people have fear, successful people have doubts, and successful people have worry. They just don't let these feelings stop them. T. Harv Eker. Besides trying to think realistically, there are other things to consider. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck examined mindsets among young students. She found that children who have a growth mindset that intelligence can be developed are better able to overcome academic challenges than those who have a fixed mindset that intelligence is predetermined. Another study on middle-aged adults completed by researchers at Yale and Miami revealed that those with more positive beliefs around aging lived 7.5 years longer than those with less positive self-perceptions of aging. Another way of looking at this phenomenon is in terms of a scarcity mentality versus an abundance mindset. Stephen Covey initially coined these terms in his best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Scarcity mentality refers to people seeing life as a finite pie, so that if one person takes a big piece, that leaves less for everyone else. Meanwhile, someone with an abundance mindset believes that there's loads of opportunity in the world. Gratitude plays a role since you focus on what you have access to and are capable of instead of your limitations. Gratitude has been shown to improve physical and mental well-being, and it even has long-lasting effects on happiness. Besides that, it helps if you don't regularly spend time with people who promote a negative worldview. Another social aspect of the abundance mindset is trying to create win-win situations for those involved, which often means listening without judgment or censorship, fully understanding what a win-win means for both of you, and brainstorming solutions until you find one that satisfies both parties. An abundance mindset allows you to see more in your life, more options, more choices, and more resources. One fascinating Harvard study found that when we focus on one particular thing very intently, other possibilities that are right in front of us can go completely unnoticed. The brain can only absorb so much. So if your belief is, I can't do it, or it's impossible, then any other thoughts contradicting that will get thrown out. Start training your mind to loosen its focus and create an expanded awareness. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Epictetus. It's also important to be able to deal with or even embrace seemingly contradictory things. Researchers call this a paradox mindset. Although this concept may sound counterintuitive, it is inspired by a long history of research showing that contemplation of apparent contradictions can break down our assumptions, offering us wholly new ways of looking at the problem. This is why various revolutionary thinkers, such as Albert Einstein, possessed a paradox mindset. Introspection, the act of examining one's thoughts, and journaling are both ways to examine conflicting ideas. A footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. Henry David Thoreau. Getting 1% better every day, or the power of tiny gains, is a potentially problematic concept since they may be subjective and assume consistent linear progress, resulting in this approach being discouraging. However, the concept of compound interest for your efforts is helpful. Our life is the sum total of all the decisions we make every day, and those decisions are determined by our priorities. Miles Monroe. To make your goals seem more attainable, use broad bracketing. This means you think of your choice, whether to indulge or not as a one-shot decision, but as a sequence of habitual decisions. Always ask yourself, what will be the consequences if I indulge every time? Also bear in mind psychological connectedness. This means you realize that in the future, you likely won't change much. You'll be equally tempted to indulge as you're now, and you won't have more willpower or resources to deal with temptations than you have now. Ask yourself, what would my older self ask me to do better now? Identify yourself with the self-image of a strong-willed person. Choose your identity based on your goals. If you want to become a runner, start thinking like one. Of course, this means your new self should be realistically capable of achieving what you'd like. If you use a narrow bracket, you consider a decision in isolation, so you only weigh the costs and benefits of the single decision. On the other hand, if you use a broad bracket, you consider the decision as one of many. In that case, you take into account the costs and benefits of a series of such decisions. To better align yourself with your goals, it may help to create not-to-do lists so that you avoid distractions and making excuses for yourself. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. Choose want-to goals for which you have intrinsic motivations, rather than have-to goals for which you have extrinsic motivations. As in, make your motivation personal, not reliant on uncontrollable outside factors. If you can't choose want-to goals, increase your want-to motivation. For the thing you have to do, find activities that promote your goals and which are enjoyable at the same time. If you can't find enjoyable goal-promoting activities, look for aspects within the activities you have to do which are immediately rewarding. Use temptation bundling, pairing an activity you have to do with an indulgence, or decrease the value of indulgence with commitment contracts, agreeing to incur costs if you fail. Be careful not to self-reward with indulgence, and don't rely on temptation bundling and commitment contracts only. For example, instead of a commitment contract, you could write your future self a letter or email, thus pressuring yourself to do the things you said. Although external motivation isn't ideal, having goals that benefit other people is thoughtful. One way to make goals more specific is to put "so that" after your vague goal. For example, learning Spanish so that you can move to Latin America. This simplicity will help you remember your motivation and thus repeat the affirmation more easily. Set rules for certain rewards to avoid abusing them, like making it so that TV is only a social activity. Think about how you'll go about cheat days if they're genuinely helpful and aren't just a sign that you need to make your goals easier. Adopt an experimental mindset, meaning you view tasks as experiments and simplify goals so that you take one step at a time. Note that viewing habits as experiments helps you to adjust habits that you inconsistently act on, partly because you're encouraged to come up with multiple possible solutions. Consistency can be more important than intensity, since it's less likely to result in burnout and thus diminished motivation. There's a good reason why overachievement and hustle culture are looked down upon. Grinding comes with a serious risk. Also note that simplifying goals allows you to reap the benefit of the domino effect and avoid fear of regret, since you're aware that failure serves as a learning experience. When you make a mistake, you have the choice to either learn your lesson right after or sometime in the future. The longer you wait, the more committed you'll be to defending yourself, and thus the harder it'll be to become your best self. Diligence is the mother of good luck. Benjamin Franklin. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation. Seneca. Luck is a dividend of sweat. The more you sweat, the luckier you get. And Ray Kroc. In 1978, a neurologist named Dr. James Austin published a book entitled Chase, Chance, and Creativity: The Lucky Art of Novelty. In it, Dr. Austin proposed that there are 4 types of luck: blind luck, luck from motion luck, from awareness, luck from uniqueness. Blind luck is completely out of your control. It includes where you are born, who you are born, to base circumstances of your life. Luck from motion is a result of your motion. You're creating motion and collisions through hustle and energy that you are inserting into an ecosystem. Luck from awareness is a result of your awareness and depth of understanding of a specific domain. This depth of understanding within a given arena allows you to become very good at positioning yourself for lucky breaks to benefit you. Luck from uniqueness occurs when your unique set of attributes attracts specific luck to you. Successful people aren't in charge of their destinies just like the rest of us, but everyone can increase the odds of luck being in their favor by using a problem-solving principle dubbed the luck raiser. Think ahead to figure out how you can boost the likelihood of a fortunate outcome. Be observant, open-minded, and proactive. You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. John C. Maxwell. The plateau of latent potential is the lag time between what you think should happen and what actually happens. When you finally break through the plateau of latent potential, people will call it an overnight success. The outside world only sees the most dramatic event rather than all that preceded it. But you know that it's the work you did long ago when it seemed that you weren't making any progress that makes the jump today possible. In other words, have active patience instead of passive patience by working and not waiting. Consider getting a productivity partner to check in on you. This could merely be keeping each other accountable or engaging in some healthy competition. It's okay if this concept doesn't interest you, but be wary of hyper-independence, an extreme form of self-reliance. Independence is a positive trait, and even hyper-independence has its benefits and can serve a purpose. But when taken to the extreme, independence can lead to anxiety, burnout, and loneliness. Everyone needs help from time to time, and asking for it isn't a sign of weakness. In fact, it will very likely make you stronger. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Lao Tzu. Another way to improve your accountability is radical responsibility. This means recognizing that your destiny is determined by your responses. Practicing it helps you avoid the decline in discipline that occurs after your spike of energy in the beginning. Note that taking radical responsibility isn't about blaming yourself for what's wrong in the world, whether it's your world, others' worlds, or God's world. It's about getting curious about how you're showing up such that the world looks this way, getting all your learnings